In this video, I'm going to show you how you can bring back non-responsive projects in the all-new Adobe Captivate. I'm Paul Wilson, and I make videos about e-learning, specifically with the authoring tool Adobe Captivate. If you like what I'm doing here, by all means like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your e-learning colleagues. One of the common questions I get a lot is, how can I adjust the placement of objects in the all-new Adobe Captivate? It seems very restrictive, and the reason for that is that the all-new Adobe Captivate, for the most part, is strictly responsive design. Now, in theory, there are possibilities that responsive design would give you that flexibility, but that's made using responsive design very difficult in the past. To solve this problem, Adobe has come up with the concept of each slide containing blocks, and within those blocks are these components that you can turn on or off. You have some ability to resize these components, but for the most part, they're fixed in those blocks, and you really can't move them around or adjust their size that much. Now, I've come up with a solution based on the all-new Adobe Captivate version 13 that involves using the PowerPoint import ability. Let me show you how this works. All right, on my slide here, you can see I've got a blank PowerPoint presentation set up. Nothing really to do here other than to simply save this somewhere on your computer. I'm going to save it to my desktop here. And we'll just put it on our desktop, presentation 2. In fact, I'm going to rename it blank presentation just to keep it simple there. I've got one there already. I'm just going to save over it. And then we can go ahead and close the PowerPoint presentation. Now I've got Adobe Captivate running. I'm just going to place this here. And we're going to use from the welcome screen the Import PowerPoint workflow. So I'm going to click on Import PowerPoint. I'm going to navigate to my desktop, and I'm going to select that blank presentation I've just created here. I don't do a lot of PowerPoint, but usually I have one or two floating around, but this blank presentation is really all I need. So I'm going to go ahead and press import. So what we end up with is a non-responsive design slide. You can see here that the icons at the top of your slide here are grayed out. And actually, if you go into the project properties, you can see that my desktop project is 1280 by 720. That's based on whatever size PowerPoint presentation file you've imported. So, if you had imported, let's say, a 4:5 resolution PowerPoint, these numbers would be different. But these are fine for my purposes here today. So let's go back to visual properties here, and again, before I start adding content to this slide, it's probably a good idea to just right click on this slide and duplicate it a number of times so that you've got some other blank slides that you can add to your project as you go. And as you need them, just continue to duplicate the slides that you need. If I do add a regular blank slide, I still end up with blocks, and that doesn't solve the problem for people who don't like using blocks because they don't like the ability, or inability rather, to resize those. So let's stick with these PowerPoint versions. These PowerPoint versions of the slide allow me to add, for example, a text component. I just need to click somewhere on the slide and that gets added. We can make some adjustments to this here. Let's choose one of the headings here. I'll center my text, and we'll just resize this to be, I guess, an appropriate size here. So I'll just add that roughly about 2/3 down the screen there. One of the nice things that occurs with Adobe Captivate 13 on these particular types of slides is you have the ability to have these transform controls. So you could adjust the width and the height, just by unlocking it. And you can also adjust the X and Y coordinates. So in other words, how far away from the left edge, X, and how far away from the top edge, Y. And you can type those numbers in. With a little bit of mathematics, you could calculate how to center this, but it would be really nice if Adobe decided to give us an alignment toolbar similar to what we had in Classic that would allow me to make sure this is centered on my page. I also have the ability to rotate this, and in the case of pictures or SVGs, I can flip it horizontally or vertically using these controls there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an image to this slide. So we'll go ahead and select image. I'll choose something from the assets library. Maybe this image here is a good one. And that's going to come in. And we can do a couple things here. Let's bring it closer to the top here. And I'll just resize it using the selection handles, which we now have full control over. And we can place that on the slide and it looks great. Now you might notice here that there are no interactive components that can be added to these slides. There is the built-in play bar that you can use. However, if you wanted to use your own controls, you could turn off that play bar and use media and select an SVG. We'll choose assets library here. And I'll zoom out to a nice bird's eye view and we'll see if we can find what looks like a next button here. And I think, I think this would be a great choice here. So I'm going to insert that icon here. We'll place that roughly where we think the center of the slide is, and I'll just resize this. And we can do all the things that we can normally do with an SVG, such as colorize it or change the clicking in the bounding box. If you want people to be more precise there, you can do that as well. You can even turn on reporting if you'd like to make this part of an assessment, but I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm simply, with the icon selected, going to navigate to interactions, click on add an interaction, click tap, and then we can go to next slide. And we can even add a slide transition here if we want. We can maybe push up so that it's almost like you're scrolling down the page here. Let's go ahead and press done. So I'm pretty happy with that, other than some minor alignment issues here. This looks pretty good. I think somewhere like there, and maybe we just move this a bit here. Again, I'm not sure, I could be off. Now I can go to slide number 2, and there are other media items that we can add to a slide like this. Let's say, for example, I wanted to add a video. I can select a video here. We can choose assets, system, or something from the web if we wish. I'm going to use one of my recent videos, which I can find just by navigating to where I store my videos temporarily before they get uploaded to the internet here. So we'll click on that. We'll open that up. And there's my video there. We can, again, use the transform controls to maybe move that video up top there. And we can just maybe resize it so that we have room for maybe a copy of this particular button there. And we'll bring that down and paste it there. So let's create a third slide here. I'm going to go ahead and put some text on the screen here. Let's resize this here, and I'll replace this with a larger section of text. Again, we can choose to alignment. This can be top aligned within the text component there. Just resize that a bit to get that to trigger. And let's say we wanted to add an image to this side here. And we'll select something from the assets library. And let's choose these 4 folks here. And we'll just reposition this so that it doesn't interfere with the text on the right here. Now, in this case here, one of the things that you can take advantage of, because you are using the PowerPoint import workflow, is that you have access to these shapes that are here. So let's say, for example, we wanted to annotate the image that's on screen by using, maybe the various word balloons that are available here. We could add that to this first person here, and maybe we just move this over here. And based on the timeline, you could have different word balloons appear for different people. So a really great feature that you can certainly take advantage of here. We'll have the guy at the right-hand side also joining the conversation. We can change the color of the word balloons. And so you could animate this, and using the timeline, have the first one appear, let's say hypothetically, at the 2-second mark and display for 4 seconds. And then at the 5-second mark, the second person decides to join the conversation until the rest of the slide there. So again, this gives you many of the capabilities that you previously had with the all-new Adobe Captivate. And because this is not responsive, you don't need to worry about where these are. Wherever you place them is where they're going to be. Let's throw in one more of these little next buttons there on this slide here. And we'll go back up to the top here and just do a quick preview to see what we've got going on. All right, so here's our welcome slide. We've got our image, we've got our text, and we can go ahead and click this next button here to take us to the next slide where we can watch this video. Once we're finished watching the video, we'll proceed with the rest of the course. And now we're here. Now watch, hey, we've got our first word balloon. It's in the right position. It's lined up with the characters, and we don't need to worry about how responsive design is going to make it difficult to set up this layout however you wish. And of course, now our students can press this big next button at the bottom and proceed with the rest of the project.
If you thought this video was helpful, please like and share it with your colleagues. If you need help with Adobe Captivate, hire Paul for one-on-one instruction. Paul's goal is to focus on lessons based on your specific needs. Visit his website at captivateteacher.com. And don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel.